"Till death do us part, my beautiful Adaeze." The words echoed through St. Augustine Catholic Church in Lagos as Chukwudi Okoro slipped the gold ring onto his bride's trembling finger. 23-year-old Adaeze Nwosu had never looked more radiant, her dark skin glowing against the white silk of her wedding dress, her natural hair styled in intricate braids adorned with fresh jasmine flowers. But what should have been the happiest moment of her life was already tainted by the first signs of the nightmare to come. As the congregation of 300 guests erupted in celebration, Adaeze caught sight of her new husband's phone buzzing insistently with text messages. Even during their wedding vows, Chukwudi couldn't resist glancing at the screen. The sinner's name made her blood run cold. "Nkechi, my heart." "Chukwudi," she whispered as they turned to face the cheering crowd. "Who is Nkechi?" "Nobody important, my wife," he replied with the charming smile that had made her fall in love 3 years earlier. "Just business. You know how demanding my oil contracts can be." Adaeze forced herself to smile and wave at the guests, but doubt had planted its first seed in her heart. She had sacrificed everything for this marriage: her university scholarship to study medicine in London, her family's objections to Chukwudi's flashy lifestyle, and her own dreams of becoming a doctor to help her community. Her mother, Mama Nwosu, had warned her repeatedly about marrying a man whose wealth came from mysterious sources. "Adaeze, my daughter, that boy's money smells like trouble. A 28-year-old should not own 3 houses and 4 cars without explaining where the wealth comes from." But Adaeze had been blinded by love and Chukwudi's promises of a life filled with luxury, travel, and happiness. He had courted her like a prince from a fairy tale, showering her with expensive gifts, romantic dinners at Lagos's finest restaurants, and promises that she would never want for anything. The reception at Oriental Hotel was magnificent, a celebration that cost more than most Nigerian families earned in 5 years. Chukwudi spared no expense, flying in a celebrity DJ from South Africa, serving imported champagne to hundreds of guests, and presenting Adaeze with a diamond necklace that made the other wives gasp with envy. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chukwudi announced during his speech, raising his champagne flute high, "today I'm marrying not just a woman, but a partner who will stand by me through better and worse, richer and poorer, in sickness and in health. Adaeze has chosen to love me unconditionally, and I promise to honor that trust forever." The crowd erupted in applause, but Adaeze noticed her new husband's eyes scanning the room as he spoke, landing frequently on a tall, light-skinned woman in a red dress who seemed to be watching him with intimate familiarity. During their first dance to Ace's "Beautiful," Chukwudi whispered sweet promises in her ear about the life they would build together. "You will never regret choosing me, Adaeze. I will make you the happiest woman in Africa." But even as they swayed to the romantic music, Adaeze could feel the woman in red watching them with an expression that looked more like possession than admiration. After the reception, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Dubai, Chukwudi's phone rang. The caller ID showed, "Nkechi, my heart again." "I have to take this," he said, stepping away from their wedding car. "Business emergency." Adaeze watched through the car window as her husband of 6 hours conducted an animated conversation, his body language suggesting intimacy rather than business. When he returned, his expression had changed from loving husband to distracted businessman. "Sorry, my love. The oil deal in Port Harcourt needs immediate attention. We might have to delay the honeymoon by a few days. Chukwudi, we just got married. Surely your business can wait." "This is a 20 million naira contract, Adaeze. Our future depends on deals like this. You said you would support my career, remember?" It was the first time he had spoken to her with impatience, and it stung more than she expected. But she had just vowed before God and 300 witnesses to support him through better and worse. "Of course, my husband. I understand." But as their wedding car drove through Lagos traffic toward their new home in Lekki, Adaeze couldn't shake the feeling that worse was going to arrive much sooner than better. Their new house was spectacular. A 6-bedroom mansion with a swimming pool, tennis court, and staff quarters for the 3 domestic workers Chukwudi had hired. It was everything he had promised and more. "Welcome to your palace, my queen," Chukwudi said, carrying her across the threshold as tradition demanded. The house was furnished with the finest European furniture, Italian marble floors, and artwork that probably cost more than most people's annual salaries. It was beautiful, luxurious, and impressive, but it felt cold, like a showroom rather than a home. That night, as they finally consummated their marriage, Adaeze tried to dismiss her growing unease. She loved this man, and love meant trust, forgiveness, and loyalty through all circumstances. But when Chukwudi's phone buzzed again at 2 a.m. with another message from Nkechi, my heart, Adaeze finally understood that her marriage vows were about to be tested in ways she had never imagined. Will Adaeze discover the truth about the mysterious Nkechi? What secrets is her new husband hiding behind his charming smile? Don't miss the shocking revelations that will test everything she believes about love and loyalty. Hit that like button and subscribe to see how this tale of marriage and betrayal unfolds. Your husband is not at any oil meeting, Adaeze. He's been living with another woman for the past 2 years. The words hit Adaeze like a physical blow as she sat in her sister Ngozi's small apartment in Surulere, 3 months after a fairy tale wedding. She had come seeking advice about Chukwudi's increasingly strange behavior, not expecting to have her worst fears confirmed. Ngozi, that's impossible. We've been together for 3 years and married for 3 months. When would he have time for another relationship? Sister, sit down. Ngozi's expression was grave as she pulled out her phone. I didn't want to show you this during your honeymoon period, but you deserve to know the truth. The photos on Ngozi's phone shattered Adaeze's world. Chukwudi at a restaurant with a light-skinned woman, the same woman in the red dress from their wedding. Chukwudi kissing her passionately outside a hotel. Chukwudi's car parked outside a house in Victoria Island that Adaeze had never seen before. Her name is Nkechi Okafor, Ngozi explained gently. She's a banker with First Bank. They've been living together in that Victoria Island house since before he started courting you. Adaeze felt the room spinning around her. But he proposed to me. We planned a future together. He spent millions on our wedding. Adaeze, rich men like Chukwudi often marry for social status while maintaining their real relationships in private. You represent the respectable wife he needs for business and family image. She represents his actual emotional life. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone records showing daily communication with Nkechi. Credit card statements revealing expensive gifts purchased for someone other than his wife. Restaurant receipts from romantic dinners that happened while Chukwudi claimed to be in business meetings. Why didn't you tell me before the wedding? Adaeze asked, tears streaming down her face. I tried. Remember when I asked you to postpone the wedding for 6 months? When I suggested hiring a private investigator, you said love meant trusting without evidence. Adaeze remembered those conversations differently. She had interpreted Ngozi's concerns as jealousy of her good fortune in finding such a successful, handsome husband. Over the past 3 months, the signs had been impossible to ignore. Chukwudi disappeared for days at a time, claiming business trips to Abuja or Port Harcourt. He received intimate phone calls that he took in private. Their sex life had become mechanical and infrequent. Most painfully, he seemed to lose interest in spending time with her immediately after their wedding. What should I do? Adaeze asked, feeling lost and betrayed. Confront him, Ngozi advised. But be prepared for him to lie, manipulate, or turn the situation around to blame you. Men like this are experts at gaslighting their wives. That evening, Adaeze waited for Chukwudi in their marble-floored living room, surrounded by the luxury that had once made her feel like a princess, but now felt like a beautiful prison. He arrived at 11 p.m., claiming he had been in meetings about a new oil exploration contract. Chukwudi, we need to talk. Can it wait, Adaeze? I'm exhausted from these business negotiations. Who is Nkechi Okafor? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Chukwudi's charming mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. I don't know what you're talking about. I have photos, Chukwudi. I know about the house in Victoria Island. I know about the gifts, the dinners, the trips you've been taking together. Instead of shame or apology, Chukwudi's response was anger. You've been spying on me? Having me followed like a common criminal? You're my husband. I thought we were building a life together, but you're living a double life. Adaeze, you're being paranoid and jealous. Nkechi is a business associate. The banking industry requires relationship building, and that sometimes involves social activities. His ability to lie so smoothly while looking directly into her eyes was more frightening than his infidelity. Business associates don't kiss passionately outside hotels, Chukwudi. Those photos can be misinterpreted. You're seeing what you want to see because you're insecure about my success. The gaslighting was textbook perfect. He was turning her legitimate concerns about his cheating into her personal flaws and insecurities. I'm your wife. I deserve honesty and fidelity. You're my wife, and that means supporting me unconditionally. If you can't handle the demands of being married to a successful businessman, maybe you weren't ready for this lifestyle. The cruelty of his words was breathtaking. 3 months earlier, he had promised to cherish and honor her. Now he was suggesting their marriage problems were her fault for not accepting his adultery as part of his business success. Chukwudi, I love you. I want our marriage to work, but you have to end whatever relationship you have with this woman. He stared at her for a long moment, as if calculating whether she was worth the effort of more elaborate lies. Fine, I'll handle the Nkechi situation, but I need you to trust me and stop this jealous, paranoid behavior. A good wife supports her husband's career without question. It wasn't an apology, and it wasn't a promise to change. It was a demand that she accept his terms for their marriage. That night, as Chukwudi slept peacefully beside her, Adaeze stared at the ceiling of their luxury bedroom, realizing that marriage was indeed for better and worse. But she had never imagined that worse would arrive so quickly or hurt so deeply. Will Chukwudi really end his relationship with Nkechi, or has he just learned to hide it better? How much betrayal can a loving heart endure? Don't miss the devastating discoveries ahead. Like and subscribe to see how far a cheating husband will go to protect his double life. Mrs. Okoro, your husband asked me to give you this message. He won't be coming home tonight because he's busy planning your surprise birthday party. Adaeze stared at the young man standing at her door, recognizing him as one of Chukwudi's business associates. Her birthday was still 2 months away, but she forced herself to smile and thank the messenger. It had been 6 weeks since her confrontation with Chukwudi about Nkechi, and his lies had only become more elaborate and creative. Instead of ending the affair, he had simply become better at hiding it while making Adaeze feel guilty for not trusting him. You see how hard your husband works for you, the messenger continued, even planning surprises months in advance. You're very lucky, Ma. Lucky. The word tasted bitter in her mouth as she closed the door and returned to their empty mansion. Over the past month and a half, Chukwudi's absences had increased dramatically. Business trips to Abuja stretched into week-long disappearances. Emergency meetings happened every weekend. Late-night conference calls required him to sleep in the guest room to avoid disturbing her. Each excuse was plausible, delivered with sincere concern for her comfort and understanding. But Adaeze was learning to read the signs of deception in her husband's behavior. Her phone rang, displaying Ngozi's number. Sister, I have bad news. Nkechi Okafor is pregnant. The words hit Adaeze like a physical blow, leaving her unable to breathe. How do you know? My friend works at the private clinic in Victoria Island, where she's been receiving prenatal care. Chukwudi has been accompanying her to appointments, introduced as the baby's father. Adaeze sank into their Italian leather sofa, surrounded by the luxury that now felt like evidence of her husband's betrayal. How far along is she? For months. For months. That meant Nkechi had gotten pregnant just 1 month after Adaeze's wedding. While Adaeze was still glowing as a newlywed, believing in their future together, her husband was already creating a new life with another woman. There's more, Ngozi continued reluctantly. They've been shopping for baby furniture together. The clinic staff thinks they're a happy couple expecting their first child. The systematic nature of Chukwudi's deception was staggering. He wasn't just having an affair. He was building a complete alternate life with Nkechi while treating his legal wife like an inconvenient obligation. That night, when Chukwudi finally came home at 2 a.m., claiming exhaustion from finalizing the Port Harcourt deal, Adaeze was waiting with pregnancy test results of her own. "Chukwudi, I have wonderful news. We're going to have a baby." His reaction was not what she expected from a loving husband. Instead of joy, she saw something that looked like panic flash across his face. "Are you sure? Maybe we should wait. My business is at a critical stage, and babies are expensive." "Expensive?" Adaeze stared at her husband in disbelief. "You spend more on a single dinner than most people earn in a month, but you're worried about the expense of our child?" "It's not just money, Adaeze. I'm traveling constantly for business. This isn't a good time to start a family." What he didn't say, but what Adaeze suddenly understood, was that he was already starting a family with Nkechi. "Chukwudi, we've been married for 4 months. When exactly would be a good time to have children?" "Maybe in a year or two, when my business is more stable." In a year or two, Nkechi's baby would be walking and talking. Perhaps Chukwudi was planning to eliminate the inconvenience of a legal wife entirely by then. "I'm already pregnant, Chukwudi. Our baby is coming whether your business is ready or not." The cold calculation in his eyes as he processed this information was more hurtful than outright cruelty would have been. "Well, I suppose we'll have to make the best of it," he said, as if she had announced a minor inconvenience rather than the miracle of their first child together. Over the following days, Chukwudi's behavior toward her pregnancy revealed the true state of their marriage. He showed no excitement about becoming a father, didn't accompany her to doctor appointments, and seemed irritated when she experienced morning sickness. Meanwhile, according to Ngozi's intelligence network, he was doting on Nkechi's pregnancy, purchasing expensive baby items and discussing nursery decorations with enthusiastic involvement. The double life was becoming impossible to ignore, but Adaeze found herself trapped by her own values. She had been raised to believe that marriage was sacred, that good wives stood by their husbands through difficulties, and that divorce was a failure of character rather than a reasonable response to betrayal. "Maybe he'll change when the baby comes," she told herself. "Maybe fatherhood will make him remember why he married me." But when she was 6 months pregnant and struggling with complications that required bed rest, Chukwudi announced another business trip to Abuja, the same weekend that Ngozi reported seeing him at a baby shower for Nkechi, who was now 7 months pregnant with what everyone assumed was his first child. Lying alone in their king-sized bed, feeling their baby kicking inside her while her husband celebrated another woman's pregnancy, Adaeze finally understood the true meaning of for better or worse. She had committed to standing by him through difficulties, but he had never committed to the same standard of loyalty to her. Will Adaeze continue to endure her husband's betrayal for the sake of her unborn child? What happens when 2 women are carrying the same man's babies at the same time? Don't miss the explosive confrontation that will change everything. Smash that subscribe button to see how far a cheating husband will go to protect his double life. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Okoro. You have a beautiful baby girl. Dr. Adebayo's cheerful announcement echoed through the private delivery room at Lagos University Teaching Hospital, but only one parent was there to hear it. Chukwudi had missed the birth of his daughter because he was attending to Nkechi, who had gone into labor the same day. Adaeze held her newborn daughter, Chioma, with tears streaming down her face, not from joy, but from the devastating realization that the most important moment of her life was happening without the man who had promised to love and cherish her forever. "Where is your husband, Ma?" the nurse asked gently, noticing that Adaeze had labored alone for 12 hours. "Business emergency," Adaeze whispered, the lie bitter on her tongue. Through her sister Ngozi, she had learned the truth. Nkechi had delivered a son the same morning, and Chukwudi was at a different hospital, playing the role of devoted father to his other child. 2 babies, born on the same day, to 2 different women, with one father who was present for only one birth. When Chukwudi finally arrived at the hospital 18 hours later, he showed more irritation than excitement about meeting his daughter. "Adaeze, you should have waited. I told you to call me if labor started. I called you 14 times, Chukwudi. Your phone was switched off for 12 hours. I was in an important board meeting. You know I can't be interrupted during business hours." Even as he lied, Adaeze could see baby formula stains on his shirt and the exhausted look of a man who had been up all night with a newborn, just not the newborn he was legally obligated to care for. When he held Chioma for the first time, his expression was polite rather than loving, like a man fulfilling his social obligation rather than meeting his daughter. "She's nice," he said, the lukewarm response breaking Adeeze's heart. During the 3 days they spent in the hospital, Chukwudi disappeared for hours at a time, claiming business calls but actually visiting Nkechi and their son in a private clinic across town. The pattern continued when they brought Chioma home to their mansion. Chukwudi showed no interest in participating in nighttime feedings, diaper changes, or the countless small tasks that come with caring for a newborn. "That's women's work," he said when Adaeze asked for help during a particularly difficult night when Chioma had colic. "I work all day to provide for this family. The least you can do is handle domestic responsibilities." What he didn't mention was that he was also providing for another family and spending most of his emotional energy on another child. Adeeze's mother, Mama Nwosu, came to help with the baby and immediately recognized signs that her daughter's marriage was in serious trouble. "Adaeze, that man shows no love for his own child. What kind of father acts annoyed by his baby's crying?" "Mama, he's just stressed about work. Men handle new fatherhood differently than women." "No, my daughter. I raised 7 children with your father, and I know the difference between stress and indifference. That man's heart is somewhere else." Mama Nwosu's observation was confirmed when she discovered Chukwudi making intimate phone calls in the garden at 2 a.m., speaking to someone he called "my love," and discussing the sleeping patterns of our beautiful son. "Adaeze," her mother said the next morning, "your husband has another family." The confrontation that had been building for months finally erupted when Adaeze discovered that Chukwudi had opened bank accounts for Nkechi and their son, transferring millions of naira while complaining about the expenses of supporting his legal wife and daughter. "You're stealing from our family to support your mistress," Adaeze screamed, waving bank statements that documented his financial betrayal. "I'm not stealing anything," Chukwudi replied coldly. "My money, my decisions. You should be grateful for the lifestyle I provide instead of questioning how I manage my finances. What about our daughter's future? Her education? Her needs? Chioma will be fine. She has a roof over her head and food on the table. What more does a baby need?" The casual dismissal of their daughter's welfare was more painful than his personal betrayal of their marriage. "Chukwudi, I know about Nkechi's baby. I know you were with her when Chioma was born. I know you're living a double life." Instead of denial or apology, his response was breathtakingly cruel. "So what if I am? You knew I was a man of the world when you married me. If you can't handle sharing me with other obligations, maybe you should have married a poor man who had no choices." The word obligations to describe his other family was like a knife to Adeeze's heart. Other obligations? That woman and her child are obligations, but your legal wife and daughter are just inconveniences. Adaeze, you're becoming hysterical. This is exactly why men need variety. Emotional drama from wives becomes exhausting. His ability to turn her legitimate concerns about his bigamy into her personal failings was psychological warfare disguised as marriage counseling. That night, as she rocked Chioma to sleep in the nursery she had lovingly prepared for their child, Adaeze finally understood that her marriage vows, for better or worse, in sickness and in health, had been one-sided promises. She had committed to loyalty, but he had committed to convenience. She had vowed faithfulness, but he had reserved the right to multiple relationships. She had promised to love unconditionally, but his love came with conditions that changed whenever it suited his desires. Will Adaeze find the strength to leave her cheating husband, or will she continue to endure betrayal for the sake of their daughter? What happens when a woman realizes her marriage vows were lies? Don't miss the life-changing decision that will determine her future. Hit that like button and subscribe to see if she chooses dignity over security. "Mama, I'm taking Chioma and leaving Chukwudi." The words came out of Adeeze's mouth before she had fully decided to say them, but once spoken, they felt like the first honest statement she had made in months. She stood in her mother's small but warm sitting room in Enugu, her 6-month-old daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. Mama Nwosu set down her cup of tea and studied her daughter's face carefully. Are you sure, my child? Divorce is not something to decide in anger. I'm not angry anymore, Mama. I'm tired. Tired of pretending that my marriage is real when I'm just a decoration in my husband's public life. Tired of watching him love another woman's child while treating our daughter like an inconvenience. Tired of believing that love means accepting humiliation. The breaking point had come 3 days earlier, when Chukwudi brought Nkechi and their son to a family gathering at his parents' house, introducing them as close family friends, while Adaeze and Chioma were relegated to formal pleasantries with distant relatives. He had our son on his lap the entire evening. Adaeze continued, tears streaming down her face, playing with him, making him laugh, showing him off to his parents like a proud father. Then he handed Chioma back to me after 5 minutes, saying she was fussy and needed her mother's touch. Mama Nwosu had warned her daughter about this exact scenario 3 years earlier, but she took no satisfaction in being right. What about money, Adaeze? How will you support yourself and the baby? I'll figure it out. I have my university degree in business administration. I can find work. I can't stay in that house watching my husband build his real family with another woman while I pretend to be grateful for his scraps of attention. The decision had been crystallizing for weeks. Chukwudi's behavior toward their daughter was becoming increasingly distant and dismissive. He forgot to ask about Chioma's first solid foods, missed her first attempts at sitting up, and showed no interest in her development or welfare. Meanwhile, through Ngozi's intelligence network, Adaeze learned that he was documenting every milestone of his son's development, sharing photos and videos with his family and friends, and planning elaborate celebrations for achievements. He's erasing us from his life while keeping us as his legal cover story, Adaeze realized. I refused to live as a lie. The practical challenges were daunting. Chukwudi controlled all their finances. The house was in his name only, and she had no independent income after 3 years of being supported as a wealthy man's wife. But the emotional cost of staying was becoming unbearable. Chioma deserved a father who loved her, not one who tolerated her existence. And Adaeze deserved a husband who chose her, not one who kept her as a convenient public facade. I'll support your decision, Mama Nwosu said finally. But be prepared for him to fight dirty. Men like Chukwudi don't like losing their possessions, even when they don't want them. That evening, Adaeze called her sister with the news. Thank God, Ngozi said immediately. I've been waiting for you to find the courage to leave that monster. But Adaeze, you need to be smart about this. Document everything. His financial infidelity, his abandonment of parental duties, his emotional abuse. You'll need evidence for custody and support arrangements. Over the next 2 days, while Chukwudi was on another business trip, actually a family vacation with Nkechi and their son to Abuja, Adaeze systematically documented the evidence of her husband's double life. Bank statements showing massive transfers to Nkechi's accounts. Credit card receipts for expensive gifts purchased for someone other than his wife. Phone records revealing daily intimate communication with his mistress. Photos from social media showing him at events with Nkechi and their son while claiming to be in business meetings. Most painfully, she found a draft of a will that Chukwudi had prepared, leaving the majority of his assets to Nkechi and their son, with only minimal provisions for his legal wife and daughter. The document revealed his long-term intentions clearly. He planned to eventually formalize his relationship with Nkechi while minimizing his obligations to Adaeze and Chioma. When Chukwudi returned from his business trip, tanned and relaxed from his family vacation, Adaeze was ready for the most important conversation of her life. Chukwudi, I want a divorce. His reaction was not surprise or sadness, but irritation at the inconvenience. Don't be ridiculous, Adaeze. You have everything a woman could want: a beautiful home, financial security, social status. Why would you throw that away over petty jealousy? Because I want a husband who loves me and a father who loves our daughter. You provide neither. Love is a luxury, Adaeze. Marriage is about partnership, stability, and mutual benefit. I provide for you generously. What more do you want? I want what you give Nkechi: attention, affection, priority in your life, and genuine care for our child. The mask of charm slipped completely as Chukwudi's true nature emerged. You will not divorce me, Adaeze. I will not be humiliated publicly by an ungrateful wife who doesn't appreciate her privileges. You have no money, no job, no way to support yourself. Where exactly do you think you're going? Away from you. I'd rather struggle with dignity than live in luxury with lies. Fine, leave if you want. But Chioma stays here. She's my daughter, and I won't have her raised in poverty because her mother is too proud to accept a good situation. The threat to separate her from their daughter was the cruelest weapon he could have chosen. You don't even want Chioma, Chukwudi. You ignore her, dismiss her, treat her like an inconvenience. Why would you fight for custody of a child you don't love? Because she's mine, and no one takes what belongs to me. Especially not an ungrateful woman who thinks she's better than the life I've provided. Will Chukwudi succeed in separating Adaeze from their daughter? Can a woman with no money fight a wealthy man for custody? Don't miss the legal battle that will determine whether justice exists for betrayed wives. Like and subscribe to see if love is stronger than money and manipulation. Mrs. Okoro, your husband is claiming you're an unfit mother who abandoned the family home and left your child with strangers. Barrister Funmi Adelik, the family lawyer Adaeze had scraped together money to hire, delivered the news with professional sympathy. Chukwudi had struck back faster and harder than anyone expected, filing for emergency custody of Chioma just 2 days after Adaeze moved back to her mother's house. But that's completely false. Adaeze protested. I brought Chioma with me. She's never been with strangers. And I didn't abandon anything. I left an abusive marriage to protect both of us. I know that, and you know that. But your husband has resources to make his version of events sound convincing in court. He's claiming you kidnapped the child and fled to another state without his permission. The legal documents Chukwudi had filed painted a picture of Adaeze as a mentally unstable woman who had abandoned her luxurious home and loving husband due to postpartum depression and irrational jealousy. He presented himself as a concerned father fighting to protect his daughter from an unbalanced mother. He has 3 senior advocates on his legal team. Barrister Adelik continued grimly. They're requesting immediate return of the child and supervised visitation only for you until a psychiatric evaluation can be completed. The systematically cruel nature of Chukwudi's attack was breathtaking. He was using their daughter as a weapon to force Adaeze back into a marriage where she would have no choice but to accept his adultery and emotional abuse. Barrister, I have evidence of his infidelity, his financial fraud, his emotional abandonment of Chioma. Surely that matters in family court. It should, but Nigerian family law still favors fathers, especially wealthy fathers who can afford the best legal representation. We need to be strategic about how we present your case. The next few weeks were a nightmare of legal maneuvering, character assassination, and financial pressure. Chukwudi's lawyers argued that Adaeze was an opportunistic wife who had enjoyed years of luxury, but now wanted to destroy her husband's reputation out of spite and greed. They conveniently ignored his double life with Nkechi, instead portraying him as a hardworking businessman whose success had made his wife jealous and demanding. Your Honor, Chukwudi's senior advocate argued during the preliminary hearing, my client has provided a palatial home, domestic staff, financial security, and every luxury imaginable for his wife and child. Instead of gratitude, she has responded with false accusations, abandonment of the matrimonial home, and kidnapping of their daughter. The judge, an elderly man who clearly believed in traditional gender roles, listened with apparent sympathy to Chukwudi's portrayal of himself as a victimized husband. Mrs. Okoro, Judge Adeyemi asked Adaeze directly, why did you leave your husband's house without discussing your concerns with him first? Your Honor, I did discuss my concerns. Multiple times. My husband is living with another woman, has fathered a child with her, and treats our daughter as an inconvenience. I left because staying would have meant accepting systematic humiliation and betrayal. The questions revealed the judge's bias clearly. The burden was on Adaeze to prove she had exhausted all options to save her marriage, while Chukwudi faced no scrutiny for his documented infidelity and abandonment of parental duties. Your Honor, how do you counsel a marriage when one spouse is actively building another family with someone else? My husband has a son with his mistress, born 1 month after our daughter. He missed Chioma's birth to be with his other child. Judge Adaeze frowned at the emotional nature of her response. Mrs. Okoro, this court deals in facts, not emotions. Do you have concrete evidence of adultery that meets legal standards? Barrister Adaeze presented the photographs, bank statements, and phone records they had gathered. But Chukwudi's legal team was prepared with explanations for everything. Your Honor, my client is a businessman who maintains professional relationships with many people, including Ms. Nkechi Okafor, a banking executive who facilitates his corporate transactions. The photographs show business dinners and professional meetings. The financial transfers represent legitimate business expenses and investment opportunities. And the child? Judge Adaeze asked. My client has never claimed paternity of Ms. Okafor's child. Any assumptions about biological relationships are speculation without DNA testing, which has never been requested or conducted. It was masterfully done. Chukwudi's lawyers had turned his systematic deception into reasonable business relationships, while making Adaeze look like a paranoid wife who had jumped to conclusions. The judge's preliminary ruling was devastating. This court finds insufficient evidence of adultery or abandonment of parental duties. However, there is clear evidence that Mrs. Okoro removed the child from the matrimonial home without her husband's consent, which constitutes custodial interference. Therefore, temporary custody of the minor child Chioma Okoro is awarded to the father, with supervised visitation rights for the mother pending psychological evaluation and marriage counseling. Adaeze felt her world collapse as the gavel fell. She would be allowed to see her daughter for 4 hours every Saturday, under the supervision of a court-appointed social worker, while Chioma lived with a father who had never shown genuine interest in her welfare. As they left the courthouse, Chukwudi approached her with a smile that was pure vindication. This was unnecessary, Adaeze. You could have avoided all this drama by simply accepting your role as my wife. But you chose pride over practicality, and now our daughter will suffer for your stubbornness. You don't even want Chioma, Adaeze replied, her voice breaking. You're just punishing me for leaving you. I want my family intact and my reputation protected. If that means teaching you a lesson about the consequences of defying your husband, so be it. The cruelty was breathtaking. He was using their daughter as a weapon to force her submission, while maintaining his double life with complete impunity. But Chukwudi had underestimated the power of a mother's love and the networks of support that exist among women who have survived similar betrayals. That evening, Mama Nwosu gathered the women of their extended family for an emergency meeting. Aunts, cousins, family friends, and church members who had watched Adaeze grow up were united in their outrage at Chukwudi's legal manipulation. This boy thinks he can use our daughter's child to break her spirit, declared Aunt Patience, Mama Nwosu's sister. He's forgotten that we are Igbo women. We don't break, we fight smarter. What can we do? Adaeze asked desperately. He has money, lawyers, and a legal system that favors men. I'm fighting with prayers and determination against a system designed to protect wealthy husbands. We can do what women have always done when formal systems fail us, said Cousin Ifeoma, who had survived her own abusive marriage. We can gather evidence, build networks, and use traditional justice to expose his crimes where modern law has failed. The plan they developed was risky but necessary. While Adaeze pursued legal appeals and psychological evaluations to prove her fitness as a mother, the network of women would systematically document Chukwudi's double life in ways that couldn't be dismissed or explained away. Men like your husband depend on secrecy and shame to maintain their power, Aunt Patience explained. Once their behavior becomes public knowledge throughout the community, their ability to manipulate situations diminishes dramatically. Will a network of women succeed in exposing Chukwudi's lies where the legal system failed? Can traditional justice triumph over modern manipulation? Don't miss the community uprising that will change everything. Hit that subscribe button to see how sisterhood becomes more powerful than money and status. Chukwudi Okoro, you are a disgrace to manhood and an enemy of every woman in this community. The voice belonged to Mama Adora. the most respected market woman in Onitsha, main market, and it carried across the crowded marketplace like a battle cry. Within minutes, dozens of traders, customers, and vendors had surrounded Chukwudi's car, preventing him from leaving while they delivered a very public judgment of his character. It had been 3 weeks since the Women's Network began their campaign of community justice, and the results were spectacular. Everywhere Chukwudi went, he faced public shaming, business boycotts, and social ostracism that money couldn't fix. You take a good woman as your wife, give her a beautiful child, then abandon them to play house with your mistress? Mama Adora continued, her voice rising with righteous anger. What kind of man files court papers to steal a baby from her mother just to protect his lies? The crowd murmured agreement as more women joined the confrontation. Market women, church members, professional women, and mothers from across the community had united in defense of Adaeze and Chioma. Please, let me pass, Chukwudi said, trying to maintain his dignity while trapped in his luxury car by dozens of angry women. This is a private family matter. Private? Laughed Mama Chinyu, whose daughter attended the same church as Adaeze. You made it public when you filed false court documents claiming our sister is an unfit mother. You made it community business when you used legal tricks to separate a baby from her mother's breast. The women have been systematic in their approach. They identified every business Chukwudi frequented, every social circle he moved in, every public space where he expected respect and deference. At his favorite restaurant, the manager politely informed him that they could no longer serve him due to concerns about customer comfort. His barber claimed to be too busy to fit him in. The exclusive gym where he worked out suddenly had membership issues that required his immediate departure. Most effectively, the women had shared their evidence of his double life throughout the community's informal information networks. Photos of Chukwudi with Nkechi and their son circulated through WhatsApp groups, church congregations, and social organizations. Every woman in Onitsha knows about your 2 families now, said Mrs. Okafor, a prominent businesswoman and church leader. We know about the bank accounts you opened for your mistress. We know about missing your daughter's birth to be with your other child. We know about the will you prepared that leaves everything to your outside family. Chukwudi's face went pale as he realized the extent of their intelligence gathering. Those are private financial matters. Nothing is private when you use the courts to persecute an innocent mother, interrupted Sister Mary, a nun who ran a shelter for abandoned women and children. You thought you could hide behind lawyers and judges, but you forgot that justice exists outside courtrooms too. The community response was unprecedented. Traditional rulers issued statements condemning men who abandoned their legitimate families. Church leaders delivered sermons about the sanctity of marriage and the duties of fathers. Women's organizations launched formal complaints about family court procedures that favored wealthy men over protective mothers. But the most powerful weapon was economic. Chukwudi's business began suffering as clients, suppliers, and partners distanced themselves from association with his scandal. Mr. Okoro, we're terminating our contract, his largest oil exploration client informed him. Our company cannot be associated with someone whose personal conduct reflects so poorly on our corporate values. This is about my family life, not my professional competence, Chukwudi protested. Sir, a man who abandons his wife and child, then uses legal manipulation to control them, cannot be trusted with multi-million naira business relationships. Character matters in corporate partnerships. Within 2 months, Chukwudi had lost 3 major contracts worth over 50 million naira. His social standing collapsed as former friends and business associates avoided association with the scandal. Meanwhile, Adaeze was building a new life with the support of women throughout the community. Job opportunities appeared as female business owners offered employment to that brave sister who stood up to her cheating husband. Childcare support materialized as mothers volunteered to help during her supervised visits with Chioma. You're becoming a symbol, Ngozi told her sister during one of their weekly strategy meetings. Women see your courage in leaving an abusive marriage, and they're inspired to demand better treatment in their own relationships. The psychological evaluation Adaeze had been required to undergo concluded that she was a loving, stable mother whose actions were those of a reasonable woman protecting herself and her child from emotional abuse. The court-appointed social worker who supervised her visits with Chioma reported that mother and child had a strong, healthy bond. But the most dramatic development came from an unexpected source. Nkechi Okafor, Chukwudi's mistress and the mother of his son, appeared at Adaeze's mother's house one evening, carrying her baby and looking exhausted. "I need to talk to you," she said quietly. "About Chukwudi, about our children, and about the lies that have destroyed all of us." The conversation that followed would change everything about the custody battle and expose truths that even Adaeze hadn't discovered. "He promised to marry me after divorcing you," Nkechi began, tears streaming down her face. "He said you were just a business arrangement, that I was his real love, that our son would be his legitimate heir." "What changed?" Adaeze asked, surprised by her own ability to feel sympathy for the woman who had helped destroy her marriage. "I realized he was lying to me the same way he lied to you. He has another woman in Abuja, pregnant with his third child. And there's a fourth woman in Port Harcourt who thinks she's his only girlfriend." The scope of Chukwudi's deception was staggering. He wasn't just maintaining a double life. He was running a network of relationships, making the same promises to multiple women while keeping each one believing she was special. "He's been using all of us," Nkechi continued. "You for social respectability, me for emotional satisfaction, the others for variety and ego boost. None of us were ever his priority, just different tools for different purposes." Will Nkechi's testimony be enough to expose Chukwudi's pattern of deception in court? How many other women has he been manipulating? Don't miss the explosive courtroom revelation that will finally bring justice. Like and subscribe to see if truth can triumph over legal manipulation. Your Honor, I have evidence that will completely change this case. Barrister Adaeze's voice rang with confidence as she stood in the packed courtroom for the final custody hearing. 3 months of community pressure, investigative work, and legal maneuvering had led to this moment. The chance to expose Chukwudi's systematic deception before Judge Adaeze. Adaeze sat in the plaintiff's section, surrounded by dozens of women who had supported her through the ordeal. Mama Nwosu held her hand tightly, while Ngozi documented everything for their records. On the opposite side, Chukwudi sat with his expensive legal team, but his usual confidence was notably absent. The community campaign had taken its toll. His business was failing, his social standing had collapsed, and now his carefully constructed lies were about to be exposed in court. "Proceed, Counselor," Judge Adaeze said, his tone more respectful than it had been during previous hearings. The media attention and community pressure surrounding the case had made him more cautious about appearing biased. "Your Honor, I call Ms. Nkechi Okafor to testify." The courtroom gasped as Nkechi entered, carrying her baby and looking nervous but determined. Chukwudi's face went white as he realized his mistress was about to betray their secret. "Ms. Okafor, please tell this court the nature of your relationship with the respondent, Mr. Chukwudi Okoro. He is my boyfriend of 3 years and the father of my son," Nkechi said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent courtroom. Chukwudi's senior advocate jumped up. "Objection. This witness has no standing in a custody matter between legally married spouses." "Your Honor," Barrister Adaeze responded smoothly, "this witness's testimony is directly relevant to the respondent's claims about his character, his commitment to family, and his fitness as a parent." Judge Adaeze considered for a moment. "Objection overruled. Continue. Ms. Okafor, where were you on the day Mrs. Okoro gave birth to her daughter?" "I was giving birth to my son at a private clinic in Victoria Island. Chukwudi was with me, not with his wife." The courtroom erupted in whispers and gasps. Even Judge Adaeze looked shocked. "You mean to tell this court that Mr. Okoro missed the birth of his legitimate child to attend the birth of your child?" "Yes, Your Honor. He said his business obligations required him to be elsewhere, but he was actually with me and our son." Barrister Adaeze presented birth certificates, hospital records, and photographic evidence showing Chukwudi at the private clinic while his wife labored alone at LUTH. Ms. Okafor, did Mr. Okoro make any promises about your future relationship? He promised to divorce his wife and marry me once his business deals were finalized. He said she was just a social arrangement, that I was his real love, and that our son would inherit his business empire. Did you believe these promises? Until I discovered he was making identical promises to other women. Nkechi's voice broke slightly. There's a pregnant woman in Abuja who thinks she's going to be his wife. Another in Port Harcourt who believes she's his only girlfriend. I realized he was using all of us. Chukwudi's legal team was frantically whispering among themselves as their client's carefully constructed defense collapsed in real time. Your Honor, Barrister Adaeze continued, I present financial records showing that Mr. Okoro has been systematically transferring money to multiple women across Nigeria, while claiming poverty when asked to support his legal wife and daughter. Bank statements filled several manila folders, documenting millions of naira transferred to Nkechi's accounts, rent payments for apartments in Abuja and Port Harcourt, and expensive gifts purchased for women other than his wife. Furthermore, I present a draft will prepare by Mr. Okoro that leaves the majority of his assets to Ms. Okafor and their son, with only minimal provisions for his legal wife and daughter. Judge Adaeze studied the documents with growing disgust. Mr. Okoro, how do you explain these financial arrangements? Chukwudi's senior advocate whispered urgently with his client before responding. Your Honor, my client's business relationships and investment decisions are not relevant to his fitness as a father. Business relationships? Judge Adayeme's voice rose. Counselor, these documents show your client systematically defrauding his legal family to support multiple mistresses and illegitimate children. How is that not relevant to his character and parental fitness? But Barrister Adaeze had saved the most damaging evidence for last. Your Honor, I called Dr. Patricia Okafor, pediatrician at Lagos University Teaching Hospital. Dr. Okafor testified that Chukwudi had visited the hospital only twice in Chioma's first year of life, showed no knowledge of his daughter's medical history, and couldn't answer basic questions about her development or care needs. In contrast, Dr. Okafor continued, Mrs. Okoro has been an exemplary mother, bringing the child for all scheduled appointments, monitoring her development carefully, and demonstrating deep knowledge of her daughter's needs and personality. The pediatrician's testimony demolished Chukwudi's claims about being a concerned father fighting for his daughter's welfare. Your Honor, Barrister Adaeze concluded, the evidence shows that Mr. Okoro filed for custody not out of love for his daughter, but as a weapon to control and punish his wife for leaving an abusive marriage. He has demonstrated a pattern of deception, financial fraud, and emotional abandonment that makes him unfit for custody of any child. Judge Adayeme's expression had transformed from mild sympathy for Chukwudi to obvious disgust at his behavior. Mr. Okoro, do you have any response to these allegations? Chukwudi's legal team huddled for several minutes before his senior advocate stood. Your Honor, we request a recess to review this new evidence. Request denied. You've had months to prepare your case. Answer the question. How do you explain your client's systematic deception of his wife, his abandonment of his daughter, and his fraudulent claims about being a devoted father? The silence stretched for long moments before Chukwudi finally stood to speak for himself. Your Honor, I made mistakes in my personal life, but that doesn't mean I don't love my daughter. Mr. Okoro, you missed her birth to be with another woman's child. You visited her twice in 12 months. You know nothing about her medical history or development. You filed false claims about her mother being unfit while you were living a quadruple life with multiple women. How exactly do these actions demonstrate love? Chukwudi had no answer that wouldn't incriminate him further. Will Judge Adaeze finally see through Chukwudi's manipulation and award custody to Adaeze? What punishment awaits a man who used his own daughter as a weapon? Don't miss the verdict that will determine whether justice exists for betrayed mothers. Smash that subscribe button for the most satisfying conclusion yet. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, this court finds that Mr. Chukwudi Okoro has demonstrated a pattern of deception, manipulation, and abandonment that makes him unfit for primary custody of the minor child. Judge Adeyeme's words rang through the courtroom like thunder, and Adaeze felt her knees weaken with relief. After months of legal battles, community support, and fighting for her daughter's welfare, justice was finally being served. Furthermore, the judge continued, his voice heavy with disapproval. The court finds that Mr. Okoro's initial custody petition was filed in bad faith, as a weapon to control and punish his wife rather than out of genuine concern for the child's welfare. Chukwudi's face had gone ashen as he realized the full extent of his defeat. His expensive lawyers sat silent, knowing their client's behavior was indefensible. Therefore, primary custody of Chioma Okoro is awarded to her mother, Mrs. Adaeze Okoro, with supervised visitation rights for the father contingent upon his completion of parenting classes and psychological evaluation. The courtroom erupted in cheers from the dozens of women who had supported Adaeze throughout her ordeal. Mama Nwosu wept with joy, while Ngozi embraced her sister with fierce pride. Additionally, Judge Adeyemi continued, raising his voice over the celebration. This court orders Mr. Okoro to pay immediate child support of N200,000 monthly, reimburse all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Okoro, and undergo counseling for anger management and relationship manipulation. But the judge wasn't finished delivering justice. Finally, this court refers Mr. Okoro's case to the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for investigation of potential financial fraud and tax evasion related to his multiple undeclared relationships and hidden assets. The referral to EFCC was devastating for Chukwudi. His business empire, already weakened by community boycotts, would now face federal investigation for financial crimes. As the gavel fell and court was dismissed, Chukwudi approached Adaeze one final time. "You've destroyed me," he said bitterly. "My business, my reputation, everything I built. No, Chukwudi, you destroyed yourself with lies, betrayal, and cruelty. I just refuse to be destroyed along with you. You could have had everything, luxury, security, status. Instead, you chose pride and stubbornness. I chose dignity and truth, something you'll never understand." As Chukwudi walked away, flanked by his expensive lawyers and facing an uncertain future, Adaeze felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. 6 months later, Adaeze was building a new life that exceeded her wildest dreams of happiness. The community support that had helped her when the custody battle had transformed into practical opportunities. Mama Adora from Onitsha Market had offered her a job managing the financial records for the Market Women's Cooperative. Sister Mary had recommended her for a position with an international NGO supporting abandoned women and children. Most importantly, Dr. Emeka Okafor, a pediatrician who had testified in her custody case, had become a friend, then something more. "Your daughter is remarkable," Dr. Emeka said as he played with 18-month-old Chioma in Adaeze's small but warm apartment. "Intelligent, curious, and clearly loved beyond measure. She's the reason I found the courage to leave," Adaeze replied, watching her daughter giggle as Dr. Emeka made funny faces. "I couldn't let her grow up thinking that a father's indifference and a mother's humiliation were normal family relationships." Dr. Emeka was everything Chukwudi had pretended to be: genuinely kind, professionally successful, and devoted to helping others. More importantly, he loved Chioma as if she were his own daughter, never making Adaeze feel like a burden or damaged goods because of her failed marriage. "Adaeze," he said one evening as they sat on her small balcony, watching Chioma sleep, "I want you to know that your past doesn't define your future. You're one of the strongest, most principled women I've ever met. Some days I wonder if I made the right choice," she admitted. "Leaving security for uncertainty, choosing struggle over comfort. Do you regret it?" Adaeze looked through the window at her daughter, sleeping peacefully in the modest room they shared, then at the man who had shown her what genuine love and respect looked like. "Never. I'd rather have authentic happiness in a small apartment than false luxury in a mansion built on lies." The transformation in her life was remarkable. Instead of being a trophy wife dependent on a cheating husband's money, She had become a respected professional advocating for women's rights and financial independence. Instead of living in isolated luxury, she was part of a community of women who supported each other through challenges and celebrated each other's victories. Instead of raising her daughter in an environment of deception and emotional abandonment, Chioma was growing up surrounded by love, honesty, and positive male role models who showed genuine interest in her development. The best revenge, Ngozi observed during one of their sister dinners, is a life well lived. Look at you now, compared to how miserable you were during that marriage. Meanwhile, Chukwudi's life had collapsed completely. The EFCC investigation had uncovered massive tax evasion and financial fraud. His business assets were seized, his multiple relationships had all ended when the women realized they had been manipulated, and he faced potential prison time for his financial crimes. Nkechi, the woman who had helped destroy Adaeze's marriage, had also found new love with a man who valued honesty and commitment. She had testified truthfully about Chukwudi's deception, and her courage in exposing his lies had earned her respect in the community. I learned that being the other woman just means being another victim of the same lies, Nkechi told Adaeze during a chance encounter at the market. Thank you for showing me that we didn't have to compete for the scraps of a worthless man's attention. As Adaeze's second wedding day approached, this time to Dr. Emeka, who had proposed with genuine love and excitement about their future together, she reflected on the journey from betrayal to blessing. Will Adaeze's second chance at love prove that good things come to those who choose dignity over convenience? What final lesson will this tale of marriage, betrayal, and redemption teach us? Don't miss the beautiful conclusion that proves true love is worth waiting for. Like and subscribe for the most uplifting ending ever. Mommy, you look like a princess. 3-year-old Chioma's excited voice filled the small room where Adaeze was preparing for her wedding to Dr. Emeka Okafor. Unlike her first wedding's elaborate chaos, this ceremony would be intimate, meaningful, and centered on love rather than status. Thank you, my darling, Adaeze said, kneeling to hug her daughter, who was dressed in a beautiful yellow flower girl dress. Are you ready to help Mommy get married to Uncle Emeka? Yes, and then he'll be my daddy for real. The simple joy in Chioma's voice was worth more than all the luxury Chukwudi had ever provided. Dr. Emeka had spent 2 years proving his love not just to Adaeze, but to her daughter, becoming the father Chioma deserved. Mama Nwosu entered the room, tears streaming down her face as she saw her daughter preparing for a marriage built on truth, respect, and genuine partnership. My daughter, you are more beautiful today than you were at your first wedding, she said, adjusting Adaeze's simple but elegant white dress. But more importantly, you are happier, stronger, and surrounded by people who truly love you. The wedding ceremony took place at St. Paul's Catholic Church in Enugu, attended by 150 people who had supported Adaeze through her darkest moments. Market women, church members, professional colleagues, and family members filled the pews with genuine joy and celebration. Sister Mary, who had helped Adaeze during her legal battles, delivered a homily about the difference between marriage as a social contract and marriage as a spiritual partnership. Today we witness not just a wedding, but a testament to the power of faith, courage, and community support. Adaeze chose to leave a marriage that offered material comfort but spiritual poverty. In doing so, she found not just freedom, but the love she always deserved. Dr. Emeka's vows were everything Chukwudi's had pretended to be, genuine, specific, and focused on partnership rather than possession. Adaeze, you taught me that love is not about what you can provide for someone, but about who you choose to become when you're with them. You made me a better man, and I promise to spend our marriage helping you become the best version of yourself. When it was Adaeze's turn to speak, her voice carried the wisdom of someone who had learned the difference between love and manipulation. Emeka, 3 years ago, I thought marriage was about enduring whatever your husband chose to give you. You showed me that marriage is about two people choosing each other every day, supporting each other's dreams, and building something beautiful together. The congregation erupted in applause, many wiping away tears at the power of second chances and authentic love. during the reception at a modest but beautifully decorated community hall. The contrast with Adaeze's first wedding was striking. Instead of expensive champagne and imported delicacies, there were local dishes prepared with love by community women. Instead of a celebrity DJ, there was live music from the church choir and traditional dancers. Most importantly, instead of a groom who spent the reception distracted by phone calls from mistresses, Dr. Emeka was fully present, dancing with his new wife, playing with Chioma, and expressing genuine gratitude to everyone who had supported their journey. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Emeka said during his reception speech, "Today I marry not just a woman, but a hero." Adaeze showed me what courage looks like when she chose truth over comfort, dignity over luxury, and her daughter's future over her own fear. He turned to address Adaeze directly. "You could have chosen the easy path of accepting betrayal to maintain security. Instead, you chose the harder path of building a new life based on your values. That courage inspired me to become worthy of your love." The celebration continued late into the evening, with community members sharing stories about how Adaeze's journey had inspired their own decisions to demand better treatment in their relationships. "Your courage gave me the strength to leave my abusive husband," testified Mama Chioma, a market woman who had supported Adaeze during her legal battles. "If you could rebuild your life with a baby and no money, I could do it too. You showed us that marriage vows should work both ways," added Mrs. Okafor, a church leader. "Too many women endure betrayal because we're taught that good wives accept whatever their husbands choose to give them." 5 years later, Adaeze and Dr. Emeka had built a life that exceeded every dream she'd had during her first marriage. Their modest home was filled with laughter, honest communication, and shared responsibilities. Dr. Emeka had formally adopted Chioma, who called him daddy and had no memory of the man who had rejected her as an infant. Adaeze had completed her master's degree in social work and was running a successful NGO that helped women escape abusive marriages and rebuild their lives. The organization had assisted over 500 women in 5 years, providing legal support, job training, and emotional counseling. "Every woman who walks through our doors reminds me of who I used to be," Adaeze told a journalist interviewing her about the NGO's success. "Scared, isolated, convinced that love meant accepting humiliation. Our job is to show them that they deserve better and help them build the courage to claim it." Dr. Emeka had been promoted to head of pediatrics at his hospital, where he specialized in treating children from broken homes. Their partnership extended beyond their marriage into shared professional missions of healing families and protecting children. They had 2 more children together, 7-year-old Emmanuel and 5-year-old Grace, who grew up in an environment of equality, respect, and open communication that was the opposite of Adaeze's first marriage. "Mommy," Chioma asked one day as they prepared dinner together, "why do some daddies not love their children?" It was a question Adaeze had been preparing to answer for years. "Sometimes adults make choices based on selfishness instead of love," she explained gently. "But you never have to worry about that because Daddy Emeka chose to love you completely, and real love doesn't change based on circumstances." As for Chukwudi, his story had ended very differently. The EFCC investigation had resulted in a 5-year prison sentence for tax evasion and financial fraud. His business empire had collapsed, his multiple relationships had ended, and he had lost contact with all of his children, including the son he had favored over Chioma. "I heard he's been asking about you," Ngozi mentioned during one of their family dinners. "Apparently he's been claiming that losing you was the biggest mistake of his life." "That's not true," Adaeze replied without bitterness. "The biggest mistake was thinking he could build happiness through deception and manipulation. Losing me was just the inevitable consequence of choices he made long before I left." Dr. Emeka squeezed her hand supportively. "Some people only value what they've lost when they can't replace it. But that's not real love." 8-year-old Chioma chimed in with wisdom beyond her years. "Real love means taking care of what you have while you have it." On their 5th wedding anniversary, as Adaeze and Dr. Emeka renewed their vows in the same church where they had first married, she reflected on the journey from betrayal to blessing. She had learned that for better or worse only worked when that both partners were equally committed to making things better when they got worse. She had discovered that true love was not about finding someone who would provide for you, but about finding someone who would build a life with you as an equal partner. Most importantly, she had proven that choosing dignity over security, truth over comfort, and self-respect over social approval could lead to happiness beyond her wildest dreams. "Thank you," she whispered to Dr. Emeka as they danced to their anniversary song, surrounded by their 3 beautiful children and community of supporters. "For what?" "For showing me what marriage was supposed to feel like. For loving Chioma as your own. For building a life where better is our normal and worse is something we face together." As the evening concluded with their children asleep and the community cleanup complete, Adaeze stood in her garden looking up at the stars, her heart full of gratitude for the journey that had led her from betrayal to true love. She had believed marriage was for better or worse, and she had been right. But she had learned that both partners had to be committed to that promise, and that leaving a marriage built on lies wasn't breaking her vows. It was honoring her commitment to the kind of love that marriage was supposed to represent. And so ends the tale of a woman who chose dignity over comfort and found that true love was indeed worth waiting for. What lessons will you take from Adaeze's journey? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more African folktales that inspire courage, hope, and the belief that every woman deserves genuine love and respect.